Tonight, protecting America, Obama versus Cheney, and two very different views.
There are those who embrace a view that can be summarized in two words: anything goes.
Watching a coordinated, devastating attack on our country from an underground bunker at the White House can affect how you view your responsibilities.
I'm Harry Smith. Also tonight, children left homeless by the recession.
I thought I was gonna lose the room. I thought I was gonna lose the clothes, everything.
What he is losing is his childhood.
It's like I'm seeing him become this adult overnight.
And a double-barreled ball player who can fire strikes with both arms.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening. Katie is off tonight. We have never seen anything quite like this. The president facing off with a former vice president just minutes apart on national TV over national security. President Obama and Dick Cheney have very different ideas. The president spoke first at the National Archives. Chip Reid is at the White House with more. Chip?
Well, good evening, Harry. The president argued that the Bush administration's tactics in the war on terror not only ignored American values, they also left Americans less safe.
Right now, in distant training camps and in crowded cities, there are people plotting to take American lives.
He has no more important responsibility, the president said, than protecting the American people from terrorist attacks.
But I believe with every fiber of my being that in the long run, we also cannot keep this country safe unless we enlist the power of our most fundamental values.
Standing before copies of the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and Declaration of Independence, the president said over the past 8 years, America has ignored its core values, adopting a philosophy of anything goes in the war against terrorism.
Too often, we set those principles aside as luxuries that we could no longer afford. And during this season of fear, too many of us, Democrats and Republicans, politicians, journalists, and citizens, fell silent. In other words, we went off course.
To get back on course, he said the prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, must be closed.
Rather than keeping us safer, the prison at Guantanamo has weakened American national security. It is a rallying cry for our enemies.
Disappointing critics in both parties, the president did not give a detailed plan on what will happen to the 240 detainees if Guantanamo is closed.
There are no neat or easy answers here. I wish there were.
Instead, he divided them into broad categories. About 50 have been approved for transfer to foreign countries. Some will be tried by military commissions, others in federal court, including Ahmed Galani, who the president said will be transferred to New York City for trial in the 1998 bombings of 2 U.S. embassies in Africa. Finally, the most dangerous group.
These are people who, in effect, remain at war with the United States.
People like 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. They will likely be transferred to the U.S., where they'll be imprisoned indefinitely.
I am not going to release individuals who endanger the American people. Nobody has ever escaped from one of our federal supermax prisons, which hold hundreds of convicted terrorists.
The president repeatedly blamed the Bush administration.
All too often, our government made decisions based on fear rather than foresight. We're cleaning up something that is quite simply a mess.
He said the previous administration's use of harsh interrogation techniques like waterboarding alienated the world, putting America at risk.
I can stand here today as President of the United States and say without exception or equivocation that we do not torture.
The president said opponents of closing Guantanamo Bay are using the politics of fear, and he promised it will be closed. Harry?
Chip Reid at the White House. Thanks. Across town at a conservative think tank, the audience listened closely to the president. Then, moments later, former Vice President Cheney came out to respond. Here's Bill Plant.
Answering what he called the president's mischaracterization of his administration's war policy, former Vice President Cheney began by defending the use of harsh interrogation tactics.
The interrogations were used on hardened terrorists after other efforts had failed. They prevented the violent death of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people.
Cheney argued that the proof of the strategy is in the result.
Every attempt The strike inside the United States has failed.
He was adamant that the interrogations were not torture.
Torture was never permitted, and the methods were given careful legal review before they were approved.
And that, he maintained, included waterboarding.
You've heard endlessly about waterboarding. It happened to 3 terrorists.
What he did not mention, 2 of those 3 terrorists were subjected to the simulated drowning a total of 266 times. Cheney had harsh words for those outraged by the treatment.
In my long experience in Washington, few matters have inspired so much contrived indignation and phony moralizing as the interrogation methods applied to a few captured terrorists.
Suggesting that the Obama administration has looked for middle ground in policies to fight terrorism, Cheney was disdainful.
In the fight against terrorism, there is no middle ground, and half measures keep you half exposed. There is never a good time to compromise when the lives and safety of the American people hang in the balance.
As for the president's promise to close the Guantanamo prison camp and bring some prisoners to the U.S., scorn.
I think the president will find upon reflection that to bring the worst of the worst terrorists inside the United States would be cause for great danger and regret in the years to come.
And the former vice president shared the moment that still shapes what he believes.
Watching a coordinated, devastating attack on our country from an underground bunker at the White House can affect how you view your responsibilities. And when I think about all that has to come during our administration and afterward, the recriminations, the second guessing, the charges of hubris, my mind always goes back to that moment.
The former vice president has made it clear that he intends to continue speaking out, ignoring Republicans who fear that the high-profile criticism coming from someone as unpopular as Cheney isn't helping their party. Harry?
Bill Plant at the White House as well. Thanks. A military panel decides which prisoners do get to leave Guantanamo, those who have never committed a war crime and appear to have no further intelligence value. But what happens once they get out? David Martin has more on that.
Saudi prisoners released from Guantanamo come home in style aboard a 747, checked out by doctors and greeted by senior government officials when they land. But they are not set free until they go through this rehabilitation program designed to rid them of any desire to join the ranks of holy warriors.
So far, 117 young men returned from Guantanamo have been through this program. But the number that really matters is how many have gone back to terrorism after being released. The Saudis say that number is 11.
2 of them showed up in Yemen in an al-Qaeda video. One later gave himself up. The other has been linked to this attack on the American embassy in Yemen. But the most horrendous case is that of this man, Abdallah al-Ajmi, a Kuwaiti who did not go through the Saudi program. 2 years after his release from Guantanamo, he showed up in a martyr video with the truck bomb he drove into an army base in Mosul, killing 13 Iraqi soldiers.
I am convinced al-Ajmi was not a bad guy before he got to Guantanamo.
This is what makes the Ajmi case doubly troubling. The possibility raised by his former attorney, Thomas Wilner, that Guantanamo filled Ajmi with murderous rage.
By the end of my last visit, they had put a screen up in front of his cell because he was throwing urine and feces at everyone.
According to the Pentagon, 74 of the 534 detainees released from Guantanamo, almost all during the Bush administration, have gone back to some type of extremist activity. That works out to about 14%.
That rate has been slowly but steadily rising, and Pentagon officials expect it to go still higher by the time Guantanamo is closed. Harry?
David Martin at the Pentagon tonight. Thanks. Every day there are reminders that terrorists are still planning to attack this country. Police and the FBI said today they have busted up a brazen attempt to target Jews and military planes here in New York. Chief Investigative Correspondent Armin Katayan has details.
Shackled and silent, the 4 terror suspects arrested last night appeared in federal court today, facing charges including conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction. Their homegrown plot to blow up 2 synagogues in New York City with more than 100 pounds of explosives and use surface-to-air missiles like this one to shoot down military planes at a nearby National Guard base.
They stated that they wanted to commit jihad.
The alleged terrorists are from Newburgh, New York. 3 are U.S. citizens, and all are Muslims.
I see this as part of a broader trend of cells and individuals who take it upon themselves, with no connection to al-Qaeda externally, to take out their frustration, their anger, and to try to plot something rather spectacular, as in this case.
The FBI and NYPD investigated the group for more than a year, using an informant who supplied the men with fake C4 explosives and a phony guided missile built in an FBI lab.
The arrests were made after the would-be jihadists placed the fake explosives inside parked cars right here in front of one of their targets. Prosecutors say the suspects were driven by their anger over the war in Afghanistan and their deep hatred of Jews, bent on doing something, quote, against America. Armin Katayan, CBS News, New York.
And this was a deadly day for U.S. forces in Iraq. A suicide bomber attacked an outdoor market in Baghdad as American soldiers walked patrol nearby. At least 22 people were killed, including 3 Americans, bringing the U.S. death toll in Iraq to nearly 4,300. In years past, Memorial Day was called Decoration Day, and at Arlington National Cemetery today, service members began placing flags at more than 250,000 graves, exactly 1 foot in front of each headstone, lest we forget. Still ahead on the CBS Evening News, Their Home is a Motel, our series Children of the Recession. Next. One of the most heartbreaking facets of the economic downturn is the effect it's having on children. The epidemic of foreclosures, for instance, is leaving more and more of them without a real home. And the number of families losing their homes this year is expected to top 2 million. In partnership with USA Today, Chief National Correspondent Byron Pitts continues our series, CBS Reports, Children of the Recession.
It's time to get up, sweetheart.
Meet 11-year-old Tristan Clark.
Well, have a good day.
That's his mother, Rhonda.
I love you.
If you want to understand what it means to be a homeless child in this recession, walk a day in Tristan's size 7 sneakers.
How's life for you, man?
Pretty bad, because everything is gone down the drain. We don't have enough money to pay. We can't afford food.
At school, teachers describe Tristan as a sweet boy, smart, innocent.
I feel lucky about me, because right now, at least I'm not really on the street or in a cardboard box.
Instead, he and his mom live in the El Dorado Motel on a busy street in a tough neighborhood in Salinas, California. There are 22 other homeless families here.
That's how you do it, okay?
They landed here after she lost her job in January as a job coach for people with disabilities. Cramped space, no car, no health insurance. Just a bed for her, an air mattress for him, and a plastic bowl for Tristan's turtle. Last week, Rhonda's $90 weekly unemployment check stopped.
I try to save food.
What do you mean save food?
If we're going to run out of food, I'll only eat a little bit of it, and I'll save it for later on so I won't be hungry.
His grades have dropped. He'll have to repeat 5th grade. His self-esteem has fallen, and he's often afraid.
I thought I was going to lose the clothes, everything.
That scares you when that becomes a possibility?
Yeah.
Because you've lost things before?
Yeah, I have.
Behind that Harry Potter face is a child in crisis. With his mother's permission, we kept talking.
Find the word for me.
Life and death.
You think about life and death? Why are you thinking about things like that?
Because I gave up.
For the homeless children at the El Dorado Motel, life is often bleak. But there are a few bright spots.
And then the girls need sweaters too, right?
Yeah.
Like many school districts across the country, Salinas has a homeless children's advocate. Cheryl Camedy helps identify homeless children, provides resources, free school supplies, and clothes.
I like this one.
As for Tristan Clark, he says he has one real friend. That's him, 8-year-old Gus Hernandez Jr. They're neighbors. Gus is also homeless.
Me and him share the same life. And he understands me and I understand him.
Back up!
They also share the same risk. Even a simple game of soccer can be dangerous when the ball rolls right into traffic.
Put in the room, okay?
For their safety, the boys were ordered back to their rooms by the motel owner. Anger and frustration brews in Gus every day. He lives with both parents and 4-year-old brother. They owned this house until Gus Sr. lost his job as a mortgage loan processor and the bank foreclosed on their home.
My life is dumb.
Explain.
Because how we had to live in a motel, and then how we had to come in a certain time, and then we can't play anywhere, and then most of my friends are not even there.
That must be hard.
Today was the worst day, and then tomorrow might be better.
That makes you an optimist.
Yeah.
What do you want Americans to know about you? About what it means to be a child and homeless in America?
I want them to know that they should start helping people.
Children of the recession, for whom childhood has all but passed them by. Byron Pitts, CBS News, Salinas, California.
Former pro football player Michael Vick is home after 19 months in prison for animal cruelty. But he hasn't finished paying for his crime. Not yet. Bob Orr explains.
Disgraced NFL quarterback Michael Vick scrambled to the safety of his Virginia home behind the drawn curtains of this minivan. Vick, who threw away a $130 million contract with the Atlanta Falcons by running a dogfighting ring, is serving the last 2 months of his sentence at home. He's wearing an electronic tracking bracelet and will only be permitted to leave to work as a $10 an hour construction laborer. The ex-Virginia Tech star, who condoned drowning and hanging underperforming dogs, now claims he wants to prevent dogfighting. He made that promise when he met with Humane Society President Wayne Pacelli.
We're not convinced that he's a changed man, but we do believe that he should have the chance to try to make good and to help eradicate dogfighting in this country.
But Dawn Schweikert is skeptical.
Come here, baby.
She's still trying to undo the damage Vick has done.
They were very, very scared, very skittish.
Schweikert and her husband adopted and are now working to rehabilitate Mabel and Archie, two of the beagles that Vick had intended to use as bait in training his fighting dogs at the Bad News Kennels.
They are so happy. They dance around, they bark, they kiss us. You wouldn't even have known that they were abused. So attention-starved.
The rescued dogs, it seems, are on their way back. Michael Vick's future is less certain. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
Finally tonight, you're the manager in a tight game. Who do you want pitching, the flame-throwing righty or the crafty southpaw? Why not both at the same time? Here's national correspondent Jim Axelrod.
Pat Venditti is a pitcher who puts his pants on just like every other minor leaguer. But when it comes to his glove...
6 fingers. 6 fingers, there's 2 thumbs.
That's when you realize he's unlike any pitcher you've ever seen. Blessed not with 1 great arm, but 2.
Oh boy.
The reversible glove allows him to switch pitch in a moment's notice, throwing a 90-mile-an-hour fastball with his right arm, then unleashing a collection of baffling breaking balls with his left.
There's the slider, swing and a miss from Venditti.
You know, it's really the only way I know how to pitch, and for me to go out there with only, either my right or left arm, I don't know if I would be that effective.
As the top reliever for the Charleston, South Carolina River Dogs, a Class A farm team for the New York Yankees, Venditti averages nearly 2 strikeouts an inning.
There's the slider, and there's a called third strike.
It all started when I was 3. My dad started working with me.
3 years old?
Yeah, he built a batting cage for me in our backyard, and just started going to work then, and been going ever since.
In baseball, right-handed pitchers prefer to face right-handed batters, and lefties like to face lefties. That's because it makes it tougher for the hitter to see the ball and hit it. And that is the big advantage for Pat Venditti and his ability to throw with both arms. But what happens when the switch pitcher faces a switch hitter?
This is unusual.
Chaos, like last summer when Venditti faced this switch hitter, and each kept switching sides until the umpire ordered the hitter to choose his side and stick with it.
I have never seen anything like this.
After that, professional baseball decided the pitcher must declare first which arm he'll use. Once the batter steps in, both can switch only once during the at-bat.
Breaking ball swung on and missed.
It's now known as the Venditti rule.
And that is going to do it.
Anytime the umpires have to change a rule, you know, so that they know to whom he's addressing the ball, you got a live one on your hands.
Pat Venditti's coming in, Mr. Switch pitcher.
But keep in mind, only about 10% of minor league ball players ever make it to the majors.
It's going good so far, but a long way to go. We're still a long way away from the big leagues. That's just the reality of it.
What are the chances of Pat making the bigs?
The stats don't lie. He dominates at this level.
Maybe a win for Pat Venditti.
I would really be shocked if he didn't get a chance.
Make that 2 chances to beat some very long odds.
Now the 3-2 pitch. Curve, swing and a miss. Got him.
Jim Axelrod, CBS News, Charleston, South Carolina.
And that's the CBS Evening News. For Katie Couric, I'm Harry Smith. I'll see you in the morning on The Early Show. Good night.